Hi.
Hi.
So I'm Gabi Shapiro, your Westchester solar realtor with Keller Williams and Sunchain Energy. I'm here with Brigid Motta with
Connect Appraisal. I'm a residential real estate appraiser and I service the lower Hudson Valley and southwestern Connecticut.
Amazing. So, what steps would you take when you are appraising a home that has solar versus a home without solar?
Sure. So the process is generally the same. Typically, as I'm looking at the exterior of the home, I notice that there are panels. So then as I'm talking with the homeowner or whomever is there with me for the appraisal, I'll ask them, hey, what do you know about the panels? And so a lot of times it's, oh, I don't even know. And then we have to do a lot of investigation. But if they're the homeowner who has a good understanding of what's going on, the first thing I'm asking is, are they leased, are they owned with financing, or are they owned outright? And if they say that they're owned outright, then I'm going to ask them, and they're welcome to send me this information later, but I ask them to take a look at the app that they use for their solar panels and to let me know the size of the panels, the size of the inverters, as well as the array, so what angle the panels are facing. And then later, when we are doing our sales analysis, back in the office, we're taking all the data, we're looking at all of the comps, we're going to figure out what we call the income approach for those panels based on the information that they gave us. And I failed to mention that I also need to know how old the panels are. Mm-hmm. So I want to know the size of the panels, the size of the inverter, how old the system is, and then the array. Mm-hmm. So we're going to use all of that and we're going to put it into a calculator tool. We use a tool called PV Value that will, once we input all that information, including the property address so that they're understanding what the cost of energy is per kilowatt in that region, we're going to get an idea of, over the life of the panels, what value those panels will give you as income offsetting the cost of electricity. Mm-hmm. So what it does is, if you have a brand new system, it says, okay, so over 20 years, it'll be this much. It discounts that back to today's value. But if you have a 10-year-old system, it'll say, okay, there are 10 years left. How much is it going to give us from this point? So it converts that into a value that we use in our analysis.
Okay, awesome. So there's a lot of calculations there.
It is.
But essentially, the bigger the savings, the more value added. Is that
Yes.
fair to say?
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that it matters if the panels are owned outright, financed, or leased.
Yes.
So how does that affect the appraisal?
So pretty much, if the panels are leased or they're owned with financing, they're not actually transferable with the sale. So when you own it outright, it's pretty much like having a kitchen renovation. But if you don't own it outright, it's kind of like having a car. When you sell your house, the car is not automatically part of it. It's a separate deed, it's a separate thing. So it relates to what we call the bundle of rights. When you lease the panels, you don't actually own them. They're leased by the solar company. And when you have financing, well, the panels can be removed if you fail to pay. Mm-hmm. And so while someone may be willing to take on the financing or take on the lease that you have, there really isn't value in it because you don't actually own it. So you can't transfer it. It's not part of your bundle of rights, which is a phrase that we consider in appraisal. So it does very much matter from an appraisal side. Can we give value to it? If it's owned outright. And a lot of that, like I said, an individual buyer may love the fact that there are already panels on. They're happy to take on the financing, or they're happy to negotiate that you pay for it as part of the transaction. But we don't have enough data to understand, because solar panels aren't as common as I think both of us would like for them to be.
Yeah.
But until they are, we just don't have enough data that says how much are people looking for panels, the same way we can say how much do people value air conditioning, or how much do they value an in-ground pool. Yeah. There's enough data that we can measure those factors. We can't do that yet for solar panels unless they're owned, in which case we're looking at what I mentioned is called the income approach.
Yeah, cool. So a couple clarifying questions.
Of course.
So you could sort of say that if there is financing that you're transferring, if the buyer's assuming the solar loan, then the value is just sort of separate. It's here's the home value, and the buyer is assuming the rest of the loan, which kind of represents the solar value.
Yes.
So they're just kind of two separate things. My other question, so if there's a sales contract that says that the panels will be paid off at closing, is that functionally the same as the panels are owned when you're doing the appraisal?
Yes.
Okay.
So if we were to know that explicitly, then yes, we're treating the panels as if they're owned.
Okay, excellent. Good to know.
Yeah.
And then, so kind of we talked about a little bit of the process. But then how much value is this actually going to add to the home? Are you able to give a ballpark for what you're seeing for that income approach?
So just kind of based on the different sizes of systems that I've seen, if you're talking about like a mid-market home, which most of us live in, that's the mid-market, then your panels are probably going to add like somewhere around $20,000 worth of value. Obviously it could be more, it could be less, but just kind of based on like the most frequent value that we've seen when we've run for a system that's probably within 3 to 5 years would be around $20,000.
Awesome. That's good to know. I mean, a lot of systems after incentives are, either at or below 20,000. So that's pretty cool.
Yes, and that's, the value that it would add to your home for a sale, separate to the value the benefits that you get from having solar.
Awesome. And then there was a big Zillow study a few years ago. They basically said on average, right, which is kind of silly to talk about national averages for housing markets. They said on average for the nation, they're adding 4.1%, but they also shout out the New York metro area and say that they're adding 5.4%. So do you think that is an accurate accurate figure, or did something go wrong in that study?
It was an interesting study, and I took a look at it. So we do believe that the 4% figure is a bit more accurate. So my biggest problem with Zillow in general and the Zestimate, because I do have people who call and say, well, my home should be worth this much money because that's what Zillow says, is that, well, Zillow doesn't know what's happening inside your house. They have room count, they have the age of your home, they have the size of your home, but they really don't know the condition of the home. And that's from, did you fully gut reno your home, or is it pretty much in shambles? So their methodology controlled for age of the house, room count, I think the GLA, and then whether there were or were not panels. So in New York, we have a very old housing market. You could have a beautiful gut renovated $2-3 million home in Scarsdale that is 110 years old. You could also have a 110-year-old home that feels like it's 110 years old, that hasn't been maintained as well, that hasn't been upkept as well. So because we can't really control for condition, and age is such a wide factor in the New York housing market, we feel that the 4% conservative value is a little bit more accurate even in this area. And I know there's not a huge difference between 4% and 5.5%, but I still feel like the 4% is a safer bet to think about what that's contributing to your home.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then if I was talking to someone who was thinking, oh, I really love solar panels, but I might be moving in the next couple of years, what advice would you give them?
So it's the same advice I would give anyone who's talking about a renovation and also moving. If you're going to list the house next week, don't put panels on today. You're not going to get your money back in that. A big thing that, again, we kind of run into in the appraisal world is the difference between value and cost. So a kitchen may cost you $50,000 to do a renovation, but the market may only give you 25 compared to a home that doesn't. I'm using this as a little bit of an example, but just to say that even if a system costs you $40,000, that doesn't mean that someone's going to pay you $40,000 more than they would if you didn't have them. So if you're going to be in for a few years and you're going to enjoy the benefits of the solar system, like you would enjoy the benefits of a renovated kitchen, then sure, yeah, then it may provide you some value, especially, you know, the length of the terms and things like that. You may see some money back, but I wouldn't do it if we're looking at within 6 months, just because there's just not enough data. And the same way that as soon as you drive the car off the lot, the value decreases, the technology is changing so rapidly, and we're only talking about a 20-year lifespan on average, and decreasing value, benefits year over year. I would 3 to 5 years, yeah, sure. Then if you have a great incentive, you can get a really great plan, then I definitely would do it. But any less than that, the same way that if someone said, should I put in another bathroom before I sell the house? Are you going to use the bathroom? Because you're not going to get back what you invested into it so quickly.
Awesome. Great advice.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for chatting today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.